Welcome, Canada, Canadians, and of course, lawyers hired by whatever extremist faction to sue me. My guess is this time it's going to be Calistani. They are never too much a fan of me. Anyways, tonight on Uninterrupted, we have a great show for you. We're going to be going over the China files. That'll be our top story. The Justin Trudeau's government loving China, cooperating with China, training Chinese pilots, the whole thing, and CBC ignoring it and then kind of covering it. Get onto that. Then Justin Trudeau uses the excuse of basically vaccines to come in to just say, I'm going to increase the carbon tax over 500%. Why not? Then we're going to get into Canada just freeing a terrorist because nothing goes bad when you just let terrorists roam the streets. So we're going to go into sort of the freeing of Toronto 18 terrorist mastermind, and we're going to get into some cultural appropriation as Kamala Harris ruins Hanukkah. And if I do not die watching what I'm about to show you, then there will be an episode next week. So thanks so much. Like the video, share the video, blah, blah, blah. Let's go. China. So last Wednesday, the news broke from Rebel Media, or as the CBC will call it, the Globe and Mail. News broke from Rebel Media that the Canadian military had wanted to train the Chinese military in Canada in winter warfare. Now, who would we be training the Chinese to conduct winter warfare against? Would it be countries that have winter? So the only country that I can think of that we are not allied with, that the Chinese might invade, would be Russia. Now, I don't really see why China would be fighting Russia right now. They're both sort of anti-Western allies. So when the Canadian government trained the Chinese military in winter warfare, as Trudeau wanted to do, and Global Affairs admits, who would they be training to fight in winter warfare? Now, they did have a winter warfare exercise last week, sorry, not exercise, but actual winter warfare against India in Kashmir across the LAC, line of actual control. Indian troops are killed. Would more Indian troops have been killed, or would less? I mean, do you think that the Chinese troops in some way benefited from learning from Canadians how to deal with winter conditions to help kill our allies? Interesting thoughts. Okay, so there's that. What other countries have winter? What other countries have winter conditions? America has winter and snowy conditions, and Europe. Those are two major Western allies, or Canadian allies, the European Union and America. Both of them are antagonistic to China. So training the Chinese soldiers in winter combat probably would be used to help kill Canadians, Americans, and Europeans. Good. Okay, so that story broke last week, and it took until Sunday for the CBC to even acknowledge the story. So I'm going to read the story that CBC came up with. This is on December 12th. So the story broke last week on Wednesday, and December 12th is exactly when they decided to cover it. So it's titled, again, so Canada's ties to Chinese military underscored the weird contradictions in its foreign policy. Yes, that's what this is. It's just some weird contradictions in foreign policy, like, hey, we stand for freedom. Also, here's support to a totalitarian authoritarian regime that imprisons millions of Muslims. Well, I mean, I guess we'd always play the Muslim card in the Ugair thing, but like China attacks every religious minority. Like Jews and Christians are also under attack in China. Not to minimize the suffering of Ugair people, but like it's not like China is Islamophobic. No, China will just destroy all religious communities. Religiphobic. So here this article starts out, it's been obvious for some time that there's something weird about the way Canada approaches its relationship to China. Yeah, you think the fact that the Prime Minister, when asked a question about what country he admires, said, I admire China's basic dictatorship because they've been able to turn their economy around on a dime and use that to help push more green energy products. And, okay, I love this. It makes me so mad. Because we got to talk about a lot of green energy today. I'm glad. So the reason why people like Justin Trudeau and other idiot leftists love China is because green is clean and conservatives are mean. That's the ethos of the left-wing environmentalist movement. So whenever we call something green, it must be good for the environment. We must then turn off our brains and accept it. And China knows this. So China leads the world in green technology. So wow, oh my God. Well, praise be China. more Muslims in concentration camps now because it's the most green thing to do. However, the way China's economy really works is theft. China is not very good at innovation, creation, finding new ideas. They are excellent at replication, which means they're very good at taking your ideas, stealing them, and replicating them. So when you come up with a green energy idea and you patent your green energy solar panel or wind thing or whatever to make it more efficient, you patent it. And then the Chinese say, I don't respect international patent law because something, British Empire, Opium War, then they just take your patent, switch one thing around, and now it's theirs. And they start mass producing at a lower quality the green energy product that an American, Canadian, European, Indian, whoever came up with. Now, they have the most green technologies in the world, but in actual fact what they are doing is they are putting out of business the green energy companies that are actually innovating in the West, undercutting them, mass producing their stuff at a lower quality so it's less green, right, less efficient, killing the green energy companies and claiming they're the most green thing in the world. And what do the environmentalists say? Yay, China green, me like. That's literally Justin Trudeau. So that aside, we have a disconnect. A disconnect brought into sharp relief this week. News, the global affairs, and the Department of Defense were not on the same page when it came to the military ties and training involved in People Liberation Army. Let me translate that. The Justin Trudeau government and Canadian military experts were in conflict about cooperating with the Chinese. The military experts said, no, what are you doing? That's the Chinese army. Are you crazy? And Justin Trudeau said, we want to train them to kill our allies. Yay! Okay, so that was the disconnect. Justin Trudeau wanted them to be better at killing our allies and undermining our country, and the Canadian military wanted to protect the Canadian people. Just a little minor disconnect, a disconnect, as you see, disconnected, these thoughts. In some respects, the volcanic online eruption followed stories in the Globe and Mail. Again, I love it, how they just can't say rebel media. They just can't say rebel, no, sorry, Ezra Levant broke this story. Now, you might not like Ezra Levant. You might hate Ezra Levant. You might love Ezra Levant. However, if Ezra Levant files a request for information, gets that information, goes through it, and can prove what he's saying, well, then it's true whether you like Ezra Levant or not. So, sorry, CBC, the story was broken by rebel media and Ezra Levant. You might not like them, and Globe and Mail also covered it. Because Globe and Mail, someone at the Globe and Mail said, well, if Ezra Levant can literally prove that the Prime Minister is a borderline traitor, then, well, I guess we have to report it. One story, right? And CBC does one story where they bring someone in. This is so long to opine and go, and Stephen Harper was once pro-China, and this and that. Well, it's all very complicated. No, it's really not. Okay, diplomats are alarmed when General Vance, the country's senior military commander, canceled winter military exercise with the PLA in 2019, fretting that it might aggravate Beijing or make the lives of Michael Kovrig or Master Spadler even worse. It makes for fire-breathing memes, sizzling copy, and wonderful political theater. It's all just political theater, guys. It's all just about memes and theater. If you're sophisticated like the CBC, you'll understand that this is a minor disconnect. You know, some people want to empower China to murder our allies. Some people don't. It's very complicated, you rubes. Only us at the CBC could possibly understand this. They then quote the defense minister for Khalistan, Harajit Sajjan, for some reason. Khalistan. That was the Canadian defense minister. Let me just read his statement again. It's Khalistan. Khalistani, Navdeep Bains, Khalistan. So that's the Canadian defense minister when it comes to thoughts of extremism and all that. And then it's a policy of wishful thinking. Let's just read the end of this nonsense. Here's a question no one seemed to ask this week. Why is the military exchange and training program still going on even before the hostage diplomacy was swept up with the two Michaels? No, that's the question everyone's asking. That's literally, that's the most CBC statement I've ever heard. Like, that's the most amazingly self-unaware thing I've ever heard. This is the CBC saying, here's a question no one seemed to have asked. Why was the military exchange and training program still going on even before hostage diplomacy swept up the two Michaels? No, that's all we're asking. Why are you empowering the Chinese when they're so obviously evil? And yes, they kidnapped two Canadians, so that should make it even more obvious, I guess. But no one was like, The only reason why you can't train the Chinese to kill our allies is the two Michaels. Literally no one was like that. This just shows how the CBC has utter contempt for you, and even if, they even talk about all the fiery volcanic memes and outrage about this, and then they're like, why was no one asking the right... Idiots. You can hate the CBC, or you can just laugh at it and still hate it. That's why I watch the CBC now. National defense is no stranger to suspicions about China, having spent an enormous amount of time in quietly defending itself from cyber attacks purportedly launched by Beijing groups associated with it. So, Canada's currently under attack by the Chinese, and the government knows this, but they're like, we should work with them anyway. Oh, now we get to the real villains of the world. The Trump administration has been tightening the screws on China from a diplomatic, security, and trade perspective. Good for them. There has been considerable growing debate among Western allies, led by the Americans, about the downside of military engagement and cooperation with China, with Five Eyes intelligence partners each exchanging their own warnings. A series of discussions that eventually prompted Canada's current top military commander, General John Vance, to cancel the winter warfare exercises. Yes, of course, because the Five Eyes are intelligence sharing system, right? When we cooperate with our allies to share intelligence to thwart terrorism threats, which we're going to get into how Canada just seemingly doesn't care about terrorists, or just the weirdness of it. If we're compromised by the Chinese, if we let the Chinese in, and then the Chinese can sort of read the intelligence being shared by the UK and the US and Australia and Canada, we become a security risk. And then we're out of these intelligence circles because we're a Chinese asset. And then, of course, there's debate over the telecom giant Huawei and its future in this country. Get it out, get it out, get it out. It sponsors Hockey Night in Canada. Hockey Night in Canada, brought to you by concentration camps for Muslims. The signs are all there, Burton said. No one actually woke up to the problem until covert inspectors were imprisoned. That's kind of true. Not from me, but from the general public. The public has been galvanized yet. It doesn't seem to have penetrated fully on the senior levels of political and economic elite. Thank you for saying that. Burton said that as weird it might sound, with everything else that has happened, he believes that there's some within the Canadian establishment who cling to the notion that the consular cases of Spavor and Kovac are resolved, we can go back to business as usual. So basically, if we get the two Michaels back, then, all's cozy, we can just be friends, super buddies with China. This is the only impediment to working with China there is they just happen to take two of our diplomats because we arrested Meng Wanzhou for Donald Trump. And if we just get over this, we can all go back to business as normal, and we can buy poison from China, and they can not allow us to sell us, they can boycott our canola oil and our livestock and basically launch economic warfare against us and not allow us to trade with them. But we can continue buying stuff from them, business as usual, whoopee, whoopee, whoopee. I admire their basic dictatorship, really. When I think of things that inspire me, it's the Black Lives Matter movement. It's Robin DiAngelo's white privilege movement. And it's the Chinese government, really. It's the Communist Party of China and Xi Jinping and their ability to basically, have a basic dictatorship. I just admire it so much. I admire their concentration camps. I admire their people tracking software. I admire their ability to just generally abuse human rights wherever, whenever they are. A real admiring of that dictatorship. So basic, so dictatorial. I admire it, but at least I'm better than Stephen Harper. Now, we also had news coming from Rebel Media that we are training Chinese pilots here. Again, so the real threat here from China is one, infiltration. But I want to calm you down and let you know the worries of China sort of infiltrating Canada, getting Canadian data, and sort of having a stranglehold over Canadians, making it unsafe for us to sort of go internationally to China. You don't need to worry about that as being a byproduct of Trudeau continuing this. You really don't need to worry because that's already happened. Canada's already fully infiltrated from the Chinese, and you're already screwed on that note. The real threat here is as it becomes worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and more public, the actual threat is that our allies say, you know what? Canada is no longer our ally. It's now an extension of Chinese influence, and therefore we will not cooperate it. So we lose trade partners, we lose intelligence sharing, we lose all this because while we're training Chinese pilots to kill Americans, Americans go, you know what I don't like? Americans being killed. I know, crazy. Donald Trump, so evil. But that's the risk we run here by continuing to be openly pro-China. Listen, we're already compromised as a country, but we do this so publicly, we could lose our allies. And that is the danger point.